From Hong Kong, this is Mea Culpa, the Lessons Learned from Startups podcast, based upon the Postmortem Conference, where founders, investors, lawyers, and mentors share their stories about working on, with, or for startups. I'm Jeffrey Brewer, and today we talk to Daniel Chun, CEO of Remote Tech Technology, a company focused on smart controls, home automation, and IoT. He is also an adjunct lecturer in technology at HKU Space, inventor and angel investor. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Nice to speak to you again.
Daniel, can you explain us, how did you end up in startups or entrepreneurship?
Right, this is a very good question. I have my first startup begins when I was age 26, and I was a little bit frustrated with some of the activities that I was trying to promote within a bigger enterprise that was with a bigger telco company in Hong Kong. And then I found out that I was young then, and then maybe it's worthwhile for me to actually go outside and try it out myself. And then and at age 26, with just credit cards, and then I start renting a small office in Shanghai actually. Then, of course, back then you don't actually have web hosting or anything or co-work space, so to speak. You need a space and need computing resources to handle that.
And because at that point, before that, you had a job, like you were in an employee status. Did you prepare yourself in a way that you said, okay, I'll go and do this, but I'm going to give myself X amount of months, or I've saved up for X amount of runway, or how did that work?
Yeah. So I did have some savings, but not a big deal of savings. So that's why I had the credit card story. So I gave myself a year to see if I can actually launch a service. I recall that was 1993. So I launched a service in Hong Kong. So it's more a kind of telcos type service. But that was based on fax, by the way. Actually, it was way before public internet or ISP per se. And then so I gave myself some time to try it out. As an engineer by training, I was also able to pick up a lot of skills, like you have to basically do all the cold calling, find out, try to gain traction, gain some accounts and account servicing, how to invoice these people. So that was actually a very good experience. And that was when I had the chance to understand the word entrepreneurship back in 1993. I've never actually had that word in my dictionary when I was going to unis and all that. It was not, it's not popular to have entrepreneurs, right? So.
Okay, and because normally when you talk about entrepreneurship, you normally talk about risk taking. That kind of risk taking, was that natural for you, or was it something, you had to deal with or struggle with?
I have to deal with. I am very like my fathers are both my parents are actually teachers, so they're very conservative. They're naturally not the risk-taking type. So to be quite honest, I'm one of those spoiled brat in a way that, like, back in the young days when I was like 14, 15, I would be riding bicycles in Hong Kong, you very seldom see a 14-year-old riding bicycles nowadays in the streets of, Causeway Bay or Mong Kok or Wan Chai, right? I was the one that would be riding BMX bikes and skateboarding around in town. So I like taking risks for sure. And this is very, very, very different from how my upbringing is actually.
Okay. How were you able to cope with that? Because there's a lot of uncertainty. Like you said, you had credit cards. How did you cope with that, and how did that venture turn out?
Right. So back then, the savings and, I have it wasn't even a small business loan. I might have a very draft business plan of, what needs to be done, kind of action plan. But at the same time, it was a lot of risk taking because we only have a very short runway. We can either get our first account, second account, try to get some income coming in, right? So my partner and I ran that venture for 9 months, and we got some key accounts, not big. It was able to pay the bills, but it was not scale to the level of where we would hope it to be, become a kind of a universal service that, all small business would like to take up, right? So the risk factor was the fact that we didn't know how to manage cash flow. We don't know the risk of the, how much run rate we need to work on, right? And then what our next milestone. And back then, there wasn't a lot of, I would say, education or public information on how to raise your first kind of angel fund, right? It's all self-funded. I didn't even ask my father to help me fund, for example. So these are like the things that I think it's very different from today. Where there's a lot of public lectures, like, for example, your podcast that share a lot of good stories to people. So there was a lot of uncertainties on how to get there. We know when we want to get there, but how do you actually get there? It's like, okay, well, I know we need sales. So we have a service that's credible. We know we can bring it to commercial, start selling it, and you start invoicing it. 14 days or 30 days later, you get a check coming in, right? Can we repeat that? So there was a lot of uncertainty. When we get those checks, when we get those account closed, that was always some of the risks unknowns that we have to deal with from a kind of a gaining traction standpoint.
Mm-hmm. How did that venture
Great question, Jerry.
go? Like what was the end game there?
The end game was I rack up I don't know 150,000 or 100,000 Hong Kong dollars on credit card. I have to go. My partner and I have to go back to the workforce. But it was the experience was. I mean, it might be hindsight. 101 is like, oh, you just label it. I learned a lot, but indeed, I was professional, kind of like by training as an engineer, right? Didn't have a lot of sales skill. I did a lot of product marketing though, but doesn't mean that I can close deals. I have to deal with agreements and all that. A lot of things I've learned, and I would treat it as a failure, definitely, but then something that I also until today I treasure, because I was able to pick it up where I left off, and I take it as a lesson, a lesson learned for my next, venture or my next corporate job per se.
From that, you went in corporate again?
Correct. So I went back to a telco company. That was when the global market talks about liberalization, telcos, and then of course there were a string of licenses being issued, mobile franchises being issued back in '95. So that was when there was an opportunity for me to hone my skills against in the telco area. I started my first job in the telco area. So I went to a kind of moonlighting, you would say moonlighting / startup game for about 9 months to 12 months. And then later on, I had the opportunity to go back to a corporate job. The market was good. It was good pay. And then I was able to basically go back into a corporate job where I can interact with new technology, hone my skills in business development, and then I start also moonlighting again.
What was the idea that you started moonlighting again? Like, what was the product? What was the solution?
Oh, this is so interesting. I have to say that that one was during '96 when there was the internet boom. Right, '96. I don't know, Jeffrey. Do you recall when you were first involved in internet? Everybody talks about internet domain name, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like the gold rush of the .com era, right? Everybody needs a .com. So '96, back when the internet, there's only one registrar. It's called ICANN in US. They were part of National Science Foundation, which they call Internic. The manager of my the company, it's a peer, and we both have this idea that because of the gold rush, everybody needs the domain name. Back then, it was $100. So what we did was there was the Internet that actually issued domain name as the first, as a registrar, and then we believe that there's a secondary market for domain names. So we built a exchange. It's basically a marketplace for domain name for people that want to trade. You might call it what do you call it? Domain name trolls or whatever the name they had, right? But if you we call it internicks, so it's like the internick, the nick, and then there's the nicks, the exchange. So back then, internet itself is just booming. Yahoo barely started. There was obviously a Netscape browser. So we wrote. Basically, we used Ball and C to wrote something. Wrote a software where people can interview the National Foundation Internet website, the HTTP, and do basically mass volume checking of domain names. And it was a Windows software. So it's just like writing out a Netscape browser. That was the start of it. And that was another failure. It was a very good idea. I started at the wrong place. I started in Hong Kong. They don't know, none of the banks understand how to collect money. ACH, credit card, automatic clearing house. So I end up having a good product. People download the software, they hunt domain names, they registered, they were listed, but I can't collect money. So that become folded also. Again, another lesson learned. So that was a moonlighting startup. So I was on a corporate job, moonlighting. We also did the same mistake. We rent out another office again. I should have just started off in a bedroom. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But anyway, back then there was no web hosting. We have to build our own server. So I recall I had to set up all this DNS, NT. There was using Microsoft, of course. Then there was I kind of, yeah, they have an IIS server or whatever. I have to set up everything. So
yeah, probably NT, where a lot of people don't even know that's the initial stands for new technology. But yeah, it's I can definitely understand. I'm a little bit from that era too, and I have the feeling that only just in the last 2 to 3 years, Hong Kong found out how to collect money over the internet and get payment over the internet. So you did that, and what was next for you?
Oh, okay. So that project is called Internix Domain Name Exchange. The next project I had was as a spin off of to that with the same shareholder. I had an idea, and that was very early on when Hong Kong didn't have incubation. They had an effort. They tried to put out some money, and we started this company called Net Payments, another kind of in name company. And I wrote a business plan, and I even got a funding from the earlier kind of incarnation kind of identity from the Hong Kong Science Park. They call it technology, something like incubation. And then they actually loaned out like X amount of money. The net payment company was basically you try to use mobile payment. So we want to build a gateway that actually can transact with people using SMS. So it sounds easy, and it's easy to just sell the concept. But in terms of execution, we just didn't have the right people. So that also folded very quickly. Like we got the approval funding from that identity, that Hong Kong incubation program, whatever that's called, back in '97. And then it didn't fly at all. So I actually stopped for a while. I didn't do any more startup back then. I was still in a corporate job. I was working for a telco in Taiwan. And then until 2001, I was offered a position to head an incubator in Europe for a mobile only incubator. If you can remember 2001, that was when GPRS was just right off the bat. GPRS, the 2.5G data, so to call, right? And everybody wants to create some kind of content or gaming, because everybody thinks that the Japanese have done it with the iMode, the NTT Docomo iMode, GPRS.
That was in the web, the WAP time, right?
Absolutely correct. So I was working for this telco, telco or Cellco, a cellular carrier in Taiwan, and they were growing very fast. They have a lot of mind share. So back then, when the GPRS, the WAP protocol was popular, you need a lot of content. You need a lot of developers. So I was helping this incubator in Europe to develop basically uh, gamification. You know, um, gamification could be, for example, you have an idol like Britney Spears. You know, you want to have a private conversation with him. So using a lot of SMS, WAP, you know, combination of those. So I was more an incubator at that point rather than having my own startup per se.
And from that, because also what I see is you do some angel investment. Was that already around that time, or is that way later?
Yeah. Yes. So I did invest in a couple of startup. Within our close circle of friends, we had a couple of deals that came through. Um, so I actually invest not a great deal of money, but it's enough to buy a car in Hong Kong or in Taiwan then. um, so I invest in a couple of projects that some of my friends had done. They are more in B2B supply chain management, data management in the US. Uh, they was quite successful in raising almost 1 mil, you know, altogether, you know, friends and family type, you know, but not so much. And then at the end, I think none of those actually went through by the time 2001 when the dot com kind of the 911 came, you know, the dot com failure, you know, everybody just crashes because of the 911 as well.
Yeah. So at that point, you did some angel investment, but that was more on the friendship relationship that you had with those founders or with the people who
Correct.
already invested in there.
Yeah. So these are trusted friends that had some good ideas, and it was a good, you know, on paper the valuation seems nice. You know, the next round will be an up round. There's some traction. All these, you know, it checked the boxes. You know, in a way, right? So you think, yeah, you know, 20K here, 20K there, and at the end, you end up having nothing.
That means that you didn't really had like an investment thesis, or it was just at that point, as most of us probably start out as angel investors, like, hey, I like you, here's some money, let me know if you become a unicorn, but probably not. So what were your biggest learnings from that stage as a angel investor?
At that point, I found out that there is a, the the deals that I've seen are not definitely because you know, it's a very small money, it's a very close group of people. The deals that I haven't seen enough deals to compare. That's one thing that I've learned, and that makes a lot of difference because if you have seen enough deals, right, then you can compare. Okay, well, this doesn't make sense at all, right? But you know, when you're just tunnel vision and you only see 3 deals, you thought, yeah, this guy seems to be capable. You know, he was a, you know, very capable manager. You know, it's got all this fire and energy with him. You think you put the money down, right? And your friends will probably say he's going to be in, right? So I guess my I was very tunnel vision, right? And I didn't see enough deals.
You still do angel investments, or
Yeah, yeah, we do. I do. So a lot of deals that I do now, it's mostly something that I can help in terms of distribution or brand building. So let me share with you. Since 2001, since 911, you know, the Twin Towers collapsed, I was actually in Wall Street uh, the month before 911. I was actually in Wall Street going back to my original investors for that incubator to ask for more money. And then after that, when the 911 collapsed, you know, that was when the time when I thought I will actually go, you know, find some place to rest for a while, not much traveling. So I actually invested and run myself a toy store in Canada. This is independent toy store with a theme. So I started building all these capabilities in consumer electronics, retailing, and then finally I sold the toy store to one of my customers, and then I worked professionally for a consumer electronics toy company in Canada, and that's when I actually get involved in a lot of invention, right? So right now, when I come back and look at, you know, what kind of projects I actually specifically look at is things that I can actually help with the supply chain side, maybe, or something that because I have access to distribution, therefore I can help this company to grow bigger, or can become an IP that perhaps my company can adopt, for example.
Okay, and then quite interesting, you did a toy shop in Canada. You said you wanted to take it a little bit slower, but why a toy shop? Normally, people at that point would start, I don't know, a bar or a restaurant or something else like that. But why a toy shop?
Okay. I've always been, even from young, I've always been, playing with all these gadgets and toys. One of them is RC toys, radio controlled toys. So when we relocated, my family relocated to Canada, I was actually uh, on, I was observing, what would bring me some income, and then it could be a good idea, perhaps franchisable. Um, then I start building this pop mom and pop toy store that can delight a different group of customers. A different group of customers that normally customers look for toys. They go to Toys R Us. I mean, Toys R Us are gone now, but if you think about how toys are merchandise of such move through the supply chain, at the end of the day, it's an experience, right? So I want to cultivate a retail concept where I always have this tagline. See if you can relate. And many of us like to tinker with different things, right? There are toys that has been made from long time ago, starting from Meccano to Tamiya and all these toys, and recently Lego and STEM toys, for example. They are all about promoting the skill sets, critical thinking, tinkering, inventing things, right? So this is when I thought maybe I can delight the customer experience by having them sold to the concept of today's hobby makes future engineer. So that was the tagline from day one from my toy store. Today's hobby makes future engineers. So if that's the case, that means I'm cultivating this philosophy. A customer can come in when he may be 8 years old. He buy a small set of stuff, but when he exited, he become my customer. When he grew up, become 12, 13, he may be a better person. He may be interested in science, right? So this was my concept. So I should share with you, when I had a good year, I was able to close the net, not net, sorry, to gross around 1.2 billion Canadian dollars on a retail floor space of 1,200 square foot. So that's not bad because obviously you have cycles, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would consider that was a pretty nice experience for me because it's totally something that I've not done. I know I have to wear an apron. I'm the restaurant proprietor that I have to. When people come to my store, I would say, "Welcome to Poi Toys. Really like you to have a good experience. How can I help you?" You know, I've been able to do that. The whole point was to see if I can successfully build that brand and cascade it, and then franchise it. Over time, but that didn't work out as a franchise concept. But I did successfully sold the toy store back in 2008. That was when I actually came back to Hong Kong.
So you had the shop, you sold that. What was at that point next for you?
That was when I hit a low point too because my dad was suffering from a stroke. So I came back to Hong Kong, and then that was when I actually have to basically relocate the whole family back to Hong Kong. Uh, and then so I have to restart basically everything, and that's when I start picking up. I sold some of the houses, and I have some spare cash and all that. So that's when I started up a company in Cyberport that deal with system integration of some specific educational and charity system. So that was actually initially me and my partner was just an investor into it, and then but we end up taking some. Well, at least I end up taking some operating role in it. So that company did not scale to a level where today's everybody says it's unicorn, but we have made profit. It's still sustainable, and we have been serving a lot of charity. And even until today, we serve a lot of charity.
The company's still in business.
Exactly. It's still in business.
Okay. And what was at that point your key takeaway from that venture? What did you learn from working with charities compared to your normal doing business and commercial enterprise? What was your key takeaway there?
My key takeaway is back then I did not, maybe it's from my training, I did not immerse myself into understanding a lot of the charitable causes. That means there's a lot of inequalities, there's a lot of issues that was not something that I was exposed to. Maybe I had too much time in my hand, but I got to know a lot of charities and got involved in a lot of them. And then it could be sickness, it could be kids related, it could be gender equality, um, many different type of so-called charitable or social enterprise. They do actually operate and they create impacts. So one of the key takeaway was in the third sector, we call it, it's like, what are their impact, are they impacting in Philippines or Cambodia, or is it locally in Hong Kong? How can IT or so-called information technology help to transform them and make them more, what I say, it's like more productive, or it could be more engagement. So something that I didn't know, that, oh wow, I could be doing and helping other charities to do a lot of fundraising by helping them, right? So that was something that I, until today, we serve a lot of these charities on the belief that we know something that they don't, and we're highly specialized in it. And I just do it for the passion. My team and I, we just do it for the love of it and the passion of it, right? That we can serve. So
At that point, were you still looking to do something else, or how did you end up basically in current position that you're in right now?
yeah, so I've been in my current position as the co-owner and CEO. Is when one of the partner, one of the managing director, we he has been in the business for quite long time, Remote Tech, which is a 30-year-old kind of electronics business in Hong Kong. Set foot in Hong Kong back in 1990s. So he was at the point where he may not be able to transform it anymore without extra skills or extra help, simply because um, he came from a kind of a chipsets IC business kind of environment, whereas I came from a telco consumer goods electronics environment, something that he doesn't have. So one of the offer was to help come in, help transform a company, turn it into a lot more software oriented in terms of architecture, as well as obviously with my experience in the toy industry, with patent prosecution, etc., and invention, maybe there's some synergy that I can bring it to the next level. So that was a very nice challenge for me, right? And I thought, when I evaluate their existing IP, what can I do? So I was very intrigued, and plus because there's a equity involved, that means I can buy into the company, and that was important too, because that means I can have a say at the board level, and that was very important to me.
Buying in a company, I find it always very interesting because at that point, usually you have a one founder, you have some. At that point, as you said, what was it, like 25 years of business already behind that? You as a buyer, because usually at that point we talk about people who sell the company, but you're buying into it. How did that process work for you? And like, how did, for instance, the negotiation go for like valuation? And can you explain a little bit more about that?
Great question, Jeffrey. It was a struggle for the entire board. The reason why is there was the original investors, which is the original founder, operator of the company, right? So they, the original owner, also have a need to train the second generation, like for example, to have a succession planning. So Paul, my partner and I, we one of the there were two original investors. So one of the investor would like to exit the business because he is no longer involved in day to day, but yet my partner and I have all the energy and the vision that we can transform it to become a better company. So that was when evaluation comes in. What is it worth today for, say, 10%? What is the value for the company today, right? So obviously, as a company that has been running for back then 25 years, how does it work? Is it based on PE, or is it based on just a number from thin air and you pull it out? So we were able to negotiate, at a decent, comfortable price that both parties can transact, right? The old owners and the new owners, and that's when my part of the kind of ownership also blend in. So we were doing the one transaction. So I would call it like it's almost like a management buyout. It's not leverage. It's not a big company anyway. So it was a management buyout, and we were able to um, become more influence. We have more influence in terms of the direction of the company.
Can you tell a little bit like how big the company was and what kind of culture was there inside of the company? And did that change when you came in, or was it the same? Or what was the first thing when you came in on the Monday that you really started and saying like, okay, now it's Monday morning and now I start and this is the first thing that I'm going to do right now here?
Great question. The company was manufacturing on an OEM or ODM basis a lot of remote controllers. We're talking about in the heydays when they, all these Dolby system, all these name brand Japanese brands or TVs manufacturer, they need remote controller. They would come to this company. There'll be IC sales guys that waiting outside, waiting just to sell us, ICs per se. Now, so back then it was very easy. It seems easy. But today in this competitive world, right, where internet has been very transparent to many buyers, right, and the brand owners, it's just very difficult unless you have specific um, expertise in or craftsmanships or supply chain where you can actually solve all these problems. So the company was able to maintain a few key accounts, and then my partner was able to switch it to the home automation field, in a small way, because we're never a big company. We don't have external funding, so we have to kind of cookie cut, project by project. So at the end of the day, we were able to at least turn over maybe, I don't know, 5-6 million US back then, 4 or 5 years ago. We even have one big account from US. I can't name it over here, but it's one big cable company that actually have to license our IP, for example. It could be very minute, but if they manufacture many remote controllers, for cable operators, of course you still rack up, pretty decent licensing income. Now, so if you think about it, the company had some key IP in the area of remote control business, and have starting to build all these gains distraction by licensing the particular, I would still call it software, to US companies. So as a cable company, when they actually have to sign up customers, of course you give them new remote controllers, right? And with each new remote controllers every year, when you sign up and renew the plan, you get a kind of a big volume, low margin business where we can actually count the licensing, and could still be a very good income for a small company like ours, right? Because it's just software licensing. So the model seems to start to work with all these traction coming in. So one of the big change that I have to go in and to build is to build on the foundation that we basically have a lot of the remote control codes, the infrared control codes around the world. We have to commercialize it to make it to be cloud ready. By having cloud ready, that means my customer, be it a set-top box manufacturers or be it a so-called IoT device company, they can actually use it with their host device interviewing our cloud. So back then, back 5-6 years ago, we were right at the top in front of it. Now today, I'm proudly to say that some of the top tier customers still use the same system. In US, we have Japanese customer top tier social network company. We have US top tier social network company also using us as well. So that has worked well simply because we were able to transform to a hardware company to a software infrastructure company and enabling I've always called it the last mile to connect TV and other appliances, the last mile. I call it the fabric, actually, IR fabric.
What's next for you?
Okay, so based on this investment, we have been able to sustain ourselves. So the question for us is, can we actually survive the trade war? Questions that we always get asked, right? From my board. Also, what other markets can we look into? So, therefore, our company has started about 4 years ago to look into what markets can I actually capture. Previously, 75% of my revenue is actually coming from US. So one of my key objective is to diversify my income base for the company. So one of the potential opportunities, look at the markets and then look across what kind of category of products. So from a market standpoint, we believe that the Asian market, the Asia Pacific market, would be a good potential for me to spread the risk. Then we looked at, okay, what category of products can I actually use some of the IP? So in the last 4 years, we have acquired, before I came on board, the company doesn't actually, surprisingly, despite the fact that we've been running for so long and there's a lot of, bigger companies that have lots of patents, this company did not have any patent. By today, we actually have about 7 patents. So the last 5 years, I've been actually progressively been writing out patents with some of my engineers. We prosecute them. When you get approved, we get really happy. So you can call ourselves officially inventors right now, right? But what it does, it allows us to, first of all, to have products and IP that we can cross-license to different platforms or different devices. So when I go back to the categories for the Asian market, we believe that we can solve some problems. And that was something that I've been preaching for the last 5 years, is how can I solve one of the bigger problems around the world today is the rising temperature. And then when you and I first met back 5 years ago, I was already advocating that I think this is something that my humble small company can solve. But it does take time. I have to come up with a grand plan when I slowly have the resources and execute it well. So the next stage of our growth will come to a stage where we would not just sell solutions. We will go out to the market, build a brand that actually helps solve, with products that consumers are willing to buy, and perhaps we can help each household to minimize their use of air conditioning. And I call it sustainable use of air conditioning. So that's why we have come up with the different succession of different brands before, and finally we've come to decide that we should jump into become a producer or a brand owner for a fan product. So a circulation fan. So it's called, it's right here. It's called AirX.
About now, you probably have learned from your previous angel investments, and you're still doing angel investments, as you said. Can you tell a bit, as an example of one of your recent angel investments, and why did you do that, and what did you take away from it for, as of now? Of course, I hope it's not exited yet or not ended yet, but can you tell a little bit about that one?
Yeah, sure. One of the recent investment is kind of a joint investment between the Remote Tech board and my partner. We did we had an offer from a Hong Kong Science Park company, a deal that comes in, and it's related to some core IP of using radar technology. So radar technology meaning they're using millimeter wave. So these are unlicensed band, we call it ISM band. That means you don't need to have an explicit frequency. It's not like 5G device where you have to have a frequency band, right? So the application could be related to smart city, could be related to gesture control, could be related to all sorts of uh, um, sensor application, for people's presence, right? So, um, so when the deal came to us, it was they were already at a stage where they have some traction, some POC projects. So we thought that from remote tech standpoint, and that would be something that we can help to build the distribution channel, because we have a lot of major direct accounts with SIs, with some of the name brand smart home companies out there. So we thought that if they can come up and commercialize to a line of products, then we can help build that angle, the channels. So that was an investment that we made about a year ago, and right now we're still just a startup. It's a Hong Kong Science Park startup, and I, at the application layer, I'm trying to build out also some use case for gesture control, touchless control. Maybe there's some more IP, some more patents we can apply for. We don't know yet, but we are actually pursuing. So that was a small investment, and we need to help them to have maybe further rounds, up rounds.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting and sounds very promising also. So I hope that turns out for you and way better than your first angel investments.
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
Quite often, there's a lot of advice going around, and you hear a lot of advice over and over and over again. And what kind of type of advice that you often hear, but you actually don't agree with?
From an investor standpoint, or from an operating, like the startup standpoint?
That, or even live advice?
I sometimes disagree. With the fact that you have to go for funding. In Hong Kong, it's true that if you can gain enough traction and you grow so fast, that you can show some of your early investors that we're growing so fast that we need more funding to capture those market, right? And then we've got to be in other markets now. We can replicate everything, right? But more than often, that stories are not. They're gaining page views and mind shares, and they're gaining valuation, but they're not growing organically. So I often hear from different perspectives, fellow angel investors, that you got to go fast, replicate, or or pivot, or stop this, try this, A/B testing. If it doesn't work, cut it, jump to another one, right? Do it fast, iterate. I personally felt that some of my personal success was very organic, rather than actually growing by way of getting a lot of mind share and valuations and all that. So uh, I felt that in a way, startup doesn't have to be sometimes always be a unicorn. There's a lot of people now saying that you don't have to be unicorn if you can actually deliver results, and then the returns are still above average. There are still investors out there that are interested. I'm more now inclined to invest in companies that are more realistic. They have a roadmap. They can achieve certain channels, and maybe the return is 15%. It's not going to be, 30x, 100x. But if they can deliver an average return, and there's traction, I'll be happy to hear them, right? So this is something that I constantly have this dilemma. I don't always believe in stories that said, I can deliver 100x if I had this much money.
If there's something that you want people to take away from this talk, what is it?
The opportunity for our startup in Asia Pacific is actually quite plentiful, and then there's a lot of problems that need to be solved. However, I've seen through some projects, often as a judge or as participate in some open competition, is that it may be better for the the solution, the idea to work with some existing companies rather than being a startup itself. If you can work with existing company, become their incubation. I mean, there's a movement obviously now with corporates. Could be uh, companies that are very vertical. If they're in insurance, they have their own insurance, fintech incubator, right? If they're in shipping, logistic, they have their own incubator. Work with that rather than generic accelerator or generic incubation program, because it's so hard to actually get your first anchor customer, that it becomes the runway is so tight that at the end of the day none of the party can benefit from the good ideas or the or the uh, or the product itself. So I think this is something that I would encourage the staff to think about, is like find something focused. You have one anchor customer or an incubator is willing to finance it and work with you. That would be the best case.
So at that point, basically what you're saying, vertical above horizontal.
Oh, yes.
I want to thank you for your valuable insights and sharings of your lessons learned in startups. For the listeners, although the rating of podcast is hideous, if you like this Mea Culpa series, you can rate this podcast with 5 stars as a motivation for the makers. Also, if you have anybody that you would like to hear on this podcast, let us know. The contact details are in the show notes. We also want to thank Mizuho for allowing us to use their space to record this. This is Jeffrey Brewer, and normally you would say, go out and build something meaningful. But with this COVID situation, I would just say, go and build something meaningful.